Imagine this. You're alone in your home. Outside, rain taps softly against the windows, a steady rhythm that, on any other night, might be comforting. Tonight, though, something feels different. Something's off. Before I go deeper into the story, welcome, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Echoes of Nightmares, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the future scary tales. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button too. Now back to my story. It's late. The house is silent except for the gentle patter of rain and the occasional low rumble of distant thunder. A muted glow from the streetlights filters through the curtains, casting faint shadows across the room. Shadows that stretch and shift with each flicker of light. I sit in my living room, wrapped in the kind of stillness that only comes in the deep hours of the night. The kind of stillness that makes you aware of every small sound, every soft creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the house settling. At first, it feels like just another quiet night. I settle into my chair, listening to the rain, a sound I usually find peaceful. But tonight, there's something unsettling about it. It's as if the rain is trying to mask something, a sound lying just beneath it, barely there, like a whisper in the dark. I tell myself it's nothing, just the wind, just the house. But there it is again, a soft, faint noise. So faint I can almost convince myself it's my imagination. But the sound persists, hidden within the steady fall of rain, just out of reach. I strain my ears, trying to make sense of it. The whisper grows a little louder, a little clearer. It's coming from somewhere close, somewhere inside the house. It's almost as if it's waiting for me to listen. I shift in my chair, glancing around the room, but there's nothing out of place. Everything is just as it should be, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone. The rain taps harder against the windows now, as if urging me to ignore it, to go back to the calm of a quiet night. But I can't. The sound is there, just beyond the rain, filling the silence with something unexplainable. It's as if the house itself is trying to tell me something, whispering secrets it's held for years, secrets it's waiting for someone to finally hear. I sit there listening, wondering if I'm imagining things or if something is hiding in the shadows, watching me as the rain falls steadily outside. And in that stillness, I realize I might not be as alone as I thought. I live alone in a modest house, tucked away on a quiet street where the nearest neighbor is barely visible through the trees. It's the kind of neighborhood that fades into silence once the sun dips below the horizon, where even the streetlights seem reluctant to cast too much light. My nights are usually simple, predictable. I come home, cook a small dinner, and settle down in the living room with a book or an old movie. The house has its quirks, creaky floorboards, narrow hallways that seem to stretch longer in the dark, and windows that always seem to be streaked with a fine layer of mist or rain, distorting the outside world just enough to make it feel distant. The rooms are dimly lit, each bulb casting a soft, warm glow that barely reaches the corners. Shadows linger at the edges, stretching across the floors and walls with each flicker of light. Tonight, the rain outside gives the room an almost suffocating quiet, broken only by the steady tap-tap of droplets against the windows. Usually, I find a strange comfort in these sounds. But tonight, as I go through my usual routine, there's an inexplicable tension that I can't ignore. It's subtle, like a weight pressing just at the edge of my awareness. I tell myself it's just the weather, or maybe exhaustion from a long day, but the feeling is persistent, gnawing, as if something is just beyond my sight, waiting. I catch myself glancing at the windows more often than usual. Each time, I half expect to see something or someone just outside, but the glass reflects only darkness and the streaks of rain. I shrug it off, forcing myself to ignore the uneasy feeling that's been building and focus on my usual tasks. Still, the feeling lingers, an itch I can't quite scratch. I walk through the house, double-checking each room as I go, telling myself it's just to make sure the windows are secure, that everything is as it should be. The floors creak underfoot, and with each step, I'm reminded of how alone I am out here. Each room feels slightly colder, slightly darker than the last, and the silence deepens, wrapping around me like a thick blanket. By the time I reach the end of the hallway, I find myself standing there listening again. The rain has softened slightly, leaving only the faintest patter against the glass. It's then that I hear it again, that whisper of a sound from earlier, so faint it could almost be mistaken for a trick of the mind. But no, it's there. I can't make out any words, just a faint murmur, like someone speaking too softly to be heard. It seems to come from somewhere close, yet distant at the same time, echoing through the walls. I stand there, frozen, straining to listen, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I try to shake it off, but the feeling that something is watching me only grows stronger. I tell myself it's my imagination, that it's just the rain, the wind, the settling of an old house in the dead of night. But deep down, I know that something is wrong. I can feel it, an uneasy presence that lurks just beyond the light, hiding in the shadows that stretch across the walls. It starts as a gentle sound, soft and rhythmic, a tapping that almost blends in with the rain. I wouldn't have noticed it at all if it weren't for how distinct it sounds, just slightly offbeat from the rest. Tap, pause, tap, pause. Unlike the steady drizzle against the windows, this sound has a certain weight to it, a deliberate pace. I stop what I'm doing listening. My mind searches for a reasonable explanation. Maybe it's just the house settling, I tell myself. It's old, after all, full of quirks and creaks, especially on nights like this. I shake my head, dismissing it as nothing. But the sound lingers, tapping away at the edge of my consciousness, like a quiet insistence that refuses to be ignored. I return to my book, forcing myself to read the same line over and over, but my focus is broken. That tapping is still there, faint but deliberate, as though someone or something is waiting for me to notice. I glance toward the window, the rain still streaking down, casting blurred patterns against the dark. Another sound joins the tapping. It's so faint I almost miss it, a soft creak, the kind that only an old wooden floor makes when someone shifts their weight just slightly. It's subtle, almost lost beneath the sound of rain, but it's there. I sit up a little straighter, heart pounding just a bit faster now. I try to ignore it, to go back to my book, but I can feel my attention drifting, my mind growing more aware of every little noise. I glance toward the hallway, half expecting to see. I don't know what. Nothing moves. Everything is still, bathed in shadows. But that nagging feeling of unease keeps building. I tell myself it's nothing. It has to be. But the idea plants itself in my mind, and suddenly I feel the need to check the doors and windows to make sure everything is secure. It's a ritual I don't usually feel the need to perform, but tonight, it seems necessary. I get up slowly, each step a little heavier, each creak beneath my feet a little louder. I make my way to the front door, checking the lock, pressing down on the handle to ensure it's firmly secured. I feel a small sense of relief as I find it locked, but the relief is fleeting. The tapping continues, faint and steady, somehow seeming to echo through the quiet of the house. I move to the windows one by one, looking out into the darkness, seeing nothing but my own faint reflection and the rain streaming down the glass. Everything appears undisturbed, exactly as it should be. Yet, the further I go, the stronger this inexplicable sense of dread becomes, as though each room is holding its breath, waiting. Finally, I reach the last window near the back of the house. I press my hand against the glass, feeling the cold seep through my fingertips as I peer out into the dark yard. I can't see much, just vague shapes, the outlines of trees, a low garden wall, all blurred by the rain. The tapping is louder here, still faint, but somehow closer, more insistent. Just as I'm about to turn away, I hear it again, a creak, louder this time, unmistakable, like someone stepping slowly across the floorboards. It's close, just down the hall. I freeze, holding my breath, listening as my heartbeat thuds in my chest, so loud I'm sure it can be heard through the walls. For a moment, everything is silent. The tapping stops. The rain seems to fall a little softer, as if the entire world is pausing, listening along with me. I'm rooted to the spot, caught between the urge to move and the overwhelming need to stay perfectly still. Then, another creak. Closer now, just around the corner. The hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, a chill running down my spine. I take a slow, shaky breath, telling myself it's still nothing, that there's no reason to be afraid. But I can't shake the feeling that something is there, just out of sight, waiting. I step back slowly, moving away from the window, my eyes fixed on the hallway, half expecting to see something emerge from the shadows. But nothing comes. The silence stretches on, thick and heavy, pressing down on me. Then, as if in response to my fear, the tapping starts again, louder this time, echoing through the stillness of the house. It's no longer faint, no longer subtle. Each tap resonates, carrying a strange weight that fills the air, each beat in time with the racing of my heart. I find myself backing away, retreating to the safety of the living room, where the light feels just a little warmer, a little safer. But the sounds don't stop. They follow, as though whatever's making them knows exactly where I am, as though it's drawing closer with each passing moment. I sink back into my chair, trying to calm my nerves, trying to convince myself that it's all in my head, that there's nothing there. But the unease remains, coiling in the pit of my stomach, refusing to let go. The house feels different now. Each shadow a little darker, each sound a little sharper. And as I sit there, listening to the rain and the steady tap, 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 I can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone, that something is watching, waiting just out of sight, hidden in the darkness. I glance around, my eyes moving from shadow to shadow, noting how they seem to deepen and shift with each flicker of light. For a moment, I catch myself staring at the far corner of the room, where the shadows stretch into the hallway. It's just darkness, just the usual shape of the room. But tonight it feels different, like there's something hidden within it, something just waiting for me to notice. The lights flicker briefly, just a quick dimming before returning to normal. I stare at the bulb overhead, waiting for it to stabilize. Then, in the corner of my eye, I see movement, a door just barely open, gently swaying as though disturbed by a faint breeze. It's the door to the basement, and I can't remember leaving it ajar. I swallow hard, feeling the hairs on my arms stand on end. I know I haven't been down there in days, maybe even weeks. I tell myself it's just the wind, that maybe I hadn't closed it all the way earlier, but that small crack, that sliver of darkness peeking through, feels almost like an invitation. I'm not sure what's worse, that the door was left open or that I hadn't noticed it until now. The tapping resumes, louder this time, steady and unrelenting. I find myself walking toward the door, each step slow and cautious, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Just as I reach out to close it, I hear something, a faint scraping sound coming from the basement stairs, almost like someone dragging their fingers across the steps. I pull my hand back, my breath catching in my throat. The sound stops, leaving only silence, but now I'm certain. There's something down there, something watching, waiting. My hand trembles as I reach out again, gripping the door handle tightly, and pull it shut. I turn the lock, feeling a small sense of relief as the click echoes in the stillness. I back away, returning to the living room, telling myself it's just nerves, just an overactive imagination. But as I sit down, the lights flicker again, this time more erratic, plunging the room in a quick burst of darkness before settling once more. I glanced toward the window, hoping for some reassurance from the world outside. But the street is empty, each house dark and silent, the road barely illuminated by the dim glow of a distant streetlight. Every single window is dark, as though the entire world has fallen asleep, leaving me alone in this strange, unsettling quiet. The rain continues to fall, steady but somehow quieter now, muffled by the growing tension in the air. I know I could go outside, maybe knock on a neighbor's door, but the thought of stepping out into the night, into the darkness beyond my door, fills me with a different kind of fear. I don't know what I'd find out there, or who might be waiting. Just as I'm about to sit back, I hear it again, a faint creak, this time from just outside the window. It's soft, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. I freeze, my gaze fixed on the glass, half expecting to see a shadow pass by, a face staring back at me. But there's nothing there, just the rain streaming down in thin lines, blurring the view. I tell myself I'm imagining it, that it's just the usual sounds of an old house on a stormy night. But deep down, I can't shake the feeling that something is lurking, watching me from the shadows. Have you ever felt like something was just off in your own home? Like there's something there, something waiting in the quiet? A presence you can't explain, but you know is there? I take a deep breath, pulling myself out of my thoughts, but the feeling lingers, coiled tightly in my chest. I sit there, barely breathing, waiting for the next sound, the next flicker of movement. And in that stillness, I realize I don't feel safe in my own home anymore. The shadows seem to grow darker, the silence thicker, pressing in from all sides. I look around, each corner of the room feeling sharper, each shape more ominous, as though something is hidden just beyond my line of sight, just waiting for the perfect moment. Then, from the other side of the room, I hear it, a single, deliberate knock on the wall, echoing softly through the silence. I sit there, frozen, my mind racing with questions, each one darker than the last. I know I'm alone. I have to be alone. But the knock is real, steady, resonating with a slow, calculated rhythm, as if someone, or something, is answering my unspoken fears. The knock comes again, louder this time, sending a shiver down my spine. I glance around, feeling the walls close in, the silence thickening, suffocating. I want to move, to run, but my feet are glued to the floor, held in place by an overwhelming sense of dread. And as I sit there, I realize I'm no longer sure what I'm more afraid of, that something is out there in the dark, or that it's already inside, watching, waiting for me to make a move. I sit there, my heart pounding in my chest, the silence broken only by the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows. Each droplet feels like a countdown, like it's ticking away the moments until something happens. I can't shake the feeling that something is watching me, just beyond the glass, hidden in the darkness. I tell myself to breathe, to keep calm, but my pulse feels like a drumbeat, loud and unrelenting. I force myself to look out the window, hoping the rain will provide some comfort, some proof that it's just an empty night. But as I peer through the glass, my breath catches in my throat. There, just on the edge of my vision, a shape, a dark silhouette, barely visible through the blur of rain streaming down the window. It's almost human, standing perfectly still, staring back at me. My mind races, struggling to process what I'm seeing, but just as I blink, it's gone, vanishing into the night like it was never there. I sit back, rubbing my eyes, telling myself it must have been a trick of the light, the rain playing tricks on me. But that shadow, that feeling of being watched, lingers in my mind, refusing to let go. I glance back at the window, half expecting to see it again, but there's nothing there, just the rain and the faint reflection of the room behind me. I try to convince myself it was my imagination, a result of my own fear, but then I hear it, a whisper, faint and soft, barely audible over the rain. It's just outside the window, a murmur of words I can't quite make out. My breath hitches, my pulse quickening as I lean closer, straining to hear. The words are garbled, distorted by the rain, but they feel intentional, like someone is speaking just out of reach. The whisper grows louder, still indistinct but urgent, as though calling to me, beckoning me closer. I pull back, heart racing, unsure if I even want to know what it's saying. The rain distorts everything, warping shapes and sounds, making it impossible to tell what's real and what's imagined. But that whisper, it's real. I know it is. I stand up, moving toward the window slowly, cautiously, each step feeling heavier than the last. My reflection stares back at me, a ghostly outline against the darkness. The rain blurs the world beyond, creating strange, shifting patterns, shapes that almost look like faces, reaching hands, all vanishing the moment I focus on them. Then, out of nowhere, I see it again, that fleeting shadow moving just beyond the glass. It's closer this time, barely more than a few feet away. I can make out the shape of a face, just an outline, but it's there watching me. My blood runs cold, my heart thundering in my chest as I step back, feeling the walls close in around me. The whisper turns to a low hum, a sound that fills the room, pressing in from all sides. I cover my ears, trying to block it out, but it's inside my head now, echoing, repeating, urging me to listen. It's like it knows me, like it's calling to something deep within, something I don't want to acknowledge. I close my eyes, trying to shut it all out, to convince myself that it's all in my head. But then, in the silence, I hear a single word, clear and unmistakable, spoken in a voice that sends chills down my spine. Come. The word lingers in the air, hanging heavy and thick, as though the darkness itself is breathing it out. I open my eyes, looking around, half expecting to see someone standing beside me. But the room is empty, silent save for the rain. I feel my hands trembling, my skin crawling with an overwhelming sense of dread. I know I should run, leave, do something, anything but stand here. But my legs feel like lead, holding me in place as though something is rooting me here, forcing me to stay. Then, in the corner of my eye, I see movement again, a shadow, shifting, stepping closer, just outside the window. It's clearer now, a figure with hollow eyes, staring, unmoving, as if waiting for me to come closer. I can barely breathe, every instinct telling me to look away, but I can't. I'm drawn to it, like a moth to flame, compelled to stare back at those empty, unblinking eyes. Another whisper floats through the air, low and insistent, filling the room with an otherworldly weight. Come outside. The words chill me to the core, sinking deep into my bones. I shake my head, mumbling to myself that it's not real, that none of this is real. But the figure doesn't disappear this time. It stands there, waiting, as though it is all the time in the world. I back away, retreating into the room, my eyes never leaving that shadow outside. But as I move, the figure moves with me, pacing back and forth just outside the glass, never breaking eye contact. Each step is slow, deliberate, as though taunting me, daring me to come closer. I stumble back, nearly tripping over a chair, my heart pounding so hard I can barely think. The whisper grows louder, filling my mind, drowning out every other thought. And then it stops. For a long, agonizing moment, there's only silence, the rain, the faint hum of the lights above. I hold my breath, waiting, hoping that it's over, that whatever presence is lurking has finally left. But just as I start to relax, just as I begin to think I might be safe, I hear a soft knock at the window. Slowly, I turn to face it, my heart sinking as I see the shadow again, clearer than before, closer, pressing its face to the glass. I can make out every detail now, the hollow, dark eyes, the pale skin stretched tight over a skeletal face, the thin lips curved into a twisted smile. It raises a hand, placing it against the glass, leaving a dark, smudged print that trails down slowly, almost like a caress. And then, in a voice just barely above a whisper, I hear it speak. Come outside, and I'll show you. The words are soft, almost inviting, but they carry a menace, a darkness that fills the room, making it impossible to breathe. I want to run, to scream, but I can't move. I'm trapped, caught in the gaze of this thing, this figure that shouldn't be here, that shouldn't exist. And as I stand there, paralyzed, I realize that this is no trick of the light, no illusion. It's real, and it's waiting for me to make a choice, to come closer, to step outside and face whatever horrors lie in the dark. My hand inches toward the lock, my mind screaming at me to stop, to turn away, to do anything but open that door. But the whisper echoes in my head, pulling me in, drawing me closer. I'm frozen, staring at the figure outside the window, my hand hovering over the lock, when I hear it, a soft creak from within the house. My blood runs cold as the realization sinks in. The figure outside was a distraction. Whoever, or whatever it is, it's not just outside anymore. I turn slowly, ears straining to pick up any sound, any hint of movement. The rain outside muffles everything, and for a moment I wonder if I imagined it. But then I hear it again, clearer this time, the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps just down the hall. They're inside. Somehow, they're inside my home. My heart pounds so hard I feel it in my throat, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I'm trapped, backed against the wall with nowhere to go. I press myself into the shadows, holding my breath, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they won't see me. Each step is deliberate, methodical, echoing through the silent house as they move closer. I tell myself to think, to keep calm, but my mind is racing, filled with images of every worst-case scenario, every horror that could be waiting for me in the dark. I know I have to get out, to find some way to escape, but each step I take could give me away. I glance toward the doorway, calculating my chances. I know the nearest exit is down the hall, but to get there, I'd have to pass right by the footsteps. I hold my breath, listening, hoping they'll turn away, give me an opening. But the steps keep getting closer, unrelenting, like they know exactly where I am. My eyes dart around the room, searching for anything I can use to protect myself. There's a lamp by the couch, a book on the table, but nothing that feels like it would make a difference against whatever is in here with me. I feel a bead of sweat trail down my temple as I force myself to move, one slow, careful step at a time, each footfall calculated, each breath shallow. The footsteps stop suddenly, and I freeze, heart hammering, as silence fills the room once more. I strain my ears, waiting, listening for any hint of movement, but all I hear is the soft patter of rain outside, the distant rumble of thunder. And then, without warning, the footsteps resume, this time faster, moving with a sense of purpose. I realize they're heading toward me, closing the distance. Panic grips me, my breath catching in my throat as I crouch lower, edging toward the door, desperate to escape. I slide along the wall, careful to avoid the creaky floorboard near the doorway, every inch forward feeling like a mile. My hand reaches out, fingers brushing against the doorknob, and I pull it open as quietly as I can. I glance over my shoulder, seeing only darkness, but I know they're there, lurking, waiting. I slip out into the hallway, moving as quietly as possible, feeling my way through the dark. The only light comes from the faint glow of the window down the hall, barely enough to see by. My pulse races, each step a careful calculation, every sound amplified in the silence. Just as I near the staircase, I hear it, a sharp creak from the floorboard behind me, like someone stepping into the room I just left. I freeze, my hand gripping the banister, every muscle tense, as I try to decide whether to run or stay hidden. But then, the footsteps resume, louder this time, moving directly toward me. I know I can't stay here. I have to move, have to get to the front door, where my phone is charging on the side table. I take a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm, to keep my movements slow, silent. But the footsteps behind me are relentless, growing louder, closer with each passing second. I slip down the stairs, my hand barely grazing the banister. My steps so light, I'm practically floating. The house feels colder now, each room darker, the walls seeming to close in as I move, as though trying to trap me here. I reach the bottom of the stairs, my eyes fixed on the front door just a few steps away. But as I move toward it, a shadow flickers in the corner of my eye, blocking my path. I halt, my mind racing, heart thundering as I press myself back against the wall, hiding in the dark. The footsteps are coming down the stairs now, each step slow, deliberate, almost mocking in their patience. I inch backward, knowing I have to find another way out, another way to reach the phone. My eyes dart toward the living room, where the faint outline of the back door is barely visible. It's my only option. I take a deep breath, then make a dash for it, my steps silent, my movement swift. Just as I reach the doorway, I hear a sharp intake of breath, a sound so close it feels like it's right beside me. I freeze, my hand on the door, feeling the presence behind me, looming, watching. I don't dare look back, don't dare move, as though any slight shift will give me away. Then I feel it, a cold breeze against my neck, like someone's breath, chilling me to the bone. My stomach twists, my pulse racing as I grip the door handle tighter, my mind screaming at me to move, to run. But every instinct is paralyzed by the fear, the overwhelming certainty that if I turn around, if I make a single sound, I'll see something I can never unsee. The footsteps stop, the silence thickening, pressing in from all sides. I hold my breath, feeling the walls close in, the darkness more suffocating than ever. I know I have to make a choice, to either face whatever is lurking or run and hope I can make it to safety. I pull the door open slowly, the hinges creaking softly, and slip out into the night, my feet barely touching the ground as I move. The rain is heavier now, the wind picking up, carrying the faint whisper of something that feels almost like laughter. I reach the edge of the yard, glancing back at the house, expecting to see a shadow in the window, a figure watching me leave. But there's nothing, just the empty, darkened rooms staring back at me, silent, as though nothing ever happened. But I know better. I know that whatever was in there is still waiting, hidden in the shadows, watching, waiting for the next person to come too close. I turn, running down the street, the rain soaking me to the bone, each step taking me further from that place, that nightmare. But no matter how far I go, I can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone, that something is following me, lurking just out of sight. And as I disappear into the night, the last thing I hear is that whisper, soft and insistent, calling my name, echoing through the rain. I think I'm safe. I've made it out of the house, out into the rain, the cold air filling my lungs as I race down the path toward the street. The sound of the rain is deafening now, pouring in torrents, blurring my vision as it mixes with my panicked breaths. But just as I reach the gate, a flash of lightning illuminates something up ahead. My heart stops. Standing in the middle of the path is a figure, tall, motionless, blocking my way. For a brief second, I think it's just a trick of the light, some shadow cast by the trees. But then, in the next flash, I see it more clearly. A face partially hidden in shadow, eyes fixed on me, with an expression that seems almost amused. Cold, detached, like they've been expecting me all along. I freeze, my body unwilling to move, every instinct screaming to turn back, to run. But there's nowhere left to go. My legs feel like lead, heavy and numb as I stare at that face, those hollow, unblinking eyes that seem to pierce through the dark, locking onto me. And then, as the thunder rumbles, I see it, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at the corners of their mouth, a smile that chills me to the core. Their hand lifts slowly, almost mockingly, reaching out toward me. I feel the blood drain from my face, my heart pounding so loud I can't hear anything else, can't focus on anything but the outstretched hand coming closer and closer. In that moment, I know I have a choice. Freeze here, helpless, or make a run for it. But every muscle is locked, my feet planted in place as the figure inches forward, the rain cascading off their silhouette like shadows bleeding into the night. The air feels thick, almost suffocating, each second stretching into an eternity as the hand moves closer, reaching, grasping. But then something inside me snaps. My legs move before my mind can catch up, and I lunge sideways, slipping past the figure, adrenaline surging as I stumble down the path, barely keeping my balance. I don't look back. I can't. Every instinct screams to keep running, to put as much distance as possible between me and that thing, whatever it is. The rain pounds harder, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat, thundering in my ears as I dash down the road. I feel the cold sting of branches scratching at my skin as I push through the trees, desperate to reach the lights up ahead, the safety of anything that feels remotely normal. But just as I'm about to step onto the main road, I sense it again, a presence lingering, closing in from behind. I dare a glance over my shoulder, and in the faint glow of the streetlight, I see the shadow again, lurking, watching from a distance. The face is hidden in the darkness, but I can feel those eyes on me, that smile, as though it's savoring every second of my terror. My breath catches, my legs aching as I push myself forward, willing myself to keep going, to not stop. The rain intensifies, a roaring in my ears, drowning out everything but the sound of my own footsteps, the pounding of my heart, and the relentless sense that I'm being hunted. Finally, I reach a nearby house, banging on the door, frantically glancing over my shoulder as I wait, praying someone will answer. The lights flicker on, and as the door creaks open, I throw myself inside, the warmth and light flooding over me like a lifeline. But as I close the door, something stops me. For one final, chilling moment, I look out into the night, expecting to see that figure, those eyes, watching from the shadows. But there's nothing there, only the rain pouring down over the empty street, as if it's wiped away every trace of what just happened. But even as I sit in that room, catching my breath, trying to make sense of it all, a feeling lingers, deep and unsettling. I know it's not over, that somewhere out there in the dark, that presence is waiting, watching. And as I sit there, shivering, drenched, I can still hear it. That whisper, faint and insistent, echoing through the rain. The warmth of the house feels like a barrier between me and the terror I just escaped, but it's small comfort. I sit in the neighbor's living room, shivering under a blanket, trying to catch my breath while they dial the police. I'm safe here, surrounded by light, by warmth. But the feeling of dread clings to me like a second skin. The officers arrive quickly, their presence grounding, yet surreal. I watch as they search the house, their flashlights cutting through the shadows in each room. They move through the hallways, the rooms, calling out to each other, but there's nothing. No one. The house stands empty and quiet, almost too quiet, as though it's erasing every trace of what just happened. The officer approaches me, his face calm, reassuring as he tells me there's no sign of forced entry, no sign of anyone at all. He explains it away, saying the rain and shadows play tricks on the mind, especially late at night. They give me a sympathetic nod, leaving me with reassurances that I'll be safe, that it was just my imagination. But as I step back inside, the dread returns. I walk slowly through the empty house, hearing only my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The familiar surroundings feel foreign, like I'm intruding in my own home. I make my way back to my bedroom, my fingers brushing against the walls as if seeking comfort from the solid, reassuring coldness of the house itself. And then I see it, a muddy footprint, smudged faintly on the hardwood floor, leading from the doorway to my bed. My pulse races as I follow the single track, stopping just beside the bed where I'd been moments before the nightmare began. I stare down, feeling the weight of it settle on me, the realization sinking in that whatever was here, had been watching me, standing just a few feet away, waiting in the silence. I reach for my phone, my fingers trembling as I lift it, intending to call someone, anyone, but my eyes catch something in the corner of the room, something that sends a chill down my spine, a faint smudge on the window pane, almost like a handprint pressed from the outside. My blood runs cold as I realize it wasn't just inside. It had been watching from outside, leaving only shadows in its wake. The room feels smaller, the shadows pressing in as the realization sets in. It was never gone. It was simply waiting, biding its time. And as I back away, I hear it, a soft, almost inaudible whisper, just at the edge of hearing, floating through the rain-soaked night. Some say that shadowy figure is still out there, lurking in the quiet of the night, waiting for the next empty room, the next quiet house, perhaps even closer than you think. The rain beats against the windows as I turn, feeling the weight of that presence lingering, pressing down on me even as I try to shake it off. I'll never be able to forget that face, that fleeting, shadowed smile. And as I lie in bed, eyes open, staring into the dark, I realize that I may never be alone again. What would you do if you were alone at night and heard a strange sound? Have you ever felt like something was watching you? Share your thoughts in the comments if you dare.